scenario. You're in a meeting room at the office with coworkers. One person speaks up. This person is equal to you in the hierarchy of the company. They wait until you're finished presenting to point out that they disagree with the point you made. They ask you to set up a meeting afterward to discuss the issue further. Later that day, you're presenting to a different group of coworkers with the same topic. One person speaks up. This person is equal to you in the hierarchy of the company. They begin pointing out their disagreement with the current slide before you move to the next one. This person asks you where your data came from. This person asks you, have you ever worked on a project like this before? My question for you, which person do you prefer to work with? What do each of these people look like? This person who questions me, what do they look like? What cultural backgrounds do they have? This person who questions you. What are their genders? Last, how would you view the situation if the first or the second person was a man or a woman? Does it change the way you react? You accept the feedback. You accept the criticism. And you think about the implicit bias we covered earlier, it's like based upon my culture, based upon my experiences, based upon my background. How fair can I be in my assessment of accepting what they had to say to me? And when I read this particular scenario, I thought about this thing on how do you define if a person's eccentric or if a person's crazy? And of course, the definition that we always joke about it depends upon their income bracket. Another scenario for you. You arrive to work early and see someone you know from the office on the way into the building. This person is well-liked, very successful in their role as a manager, and approachable. They seem to have an ear of upper leadership, but relate easily to their subordinates. This person smiles and talks to you on the way to the office. You part ways, and you see this person sit down and pull out their breakfast and drink before starting the day. Got all that? Well, what does this person look like? What's their gender? Skin tone? Hair color and texture? Clothing choices? What kind of food and drink do they have? As you think about these scenarios that we've just presented, I'm sure certain things came to your mind. Some positive, some negative, but they can't be neutral. And I say they can't be neutral because one of the first things you learn in Communication 101 is you cannot not communicate. So this person's very being communicates something to you. And that communication is filtered by your implicit biases. So as I talked about those people in these scenarios, think how it impacts your ability to relate, to interact, to coalesce into an effective team. To coalesce in an effective relationship, a personal relationship. Don't want to leave this out. Questions and answers. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So in those scenarios, if, like particularly the second one, if I pictured someone similar to myself, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, is that bias? I don't know. Like, how would I explain what my thought was?
Okay, it may be a little biased because you're perceiving that a person to be successful, et cetera, has to look like me. It's only negative in the sense that it will prevent you from seeing the potential or the possibility within other people. So sometimes you may see someone else, if you just see them looking like you, it's like, great. But don't limit it to that always. It's like bringing awareness to the fact that when I see myself, that's what I say is successful. If I see someone maybe a little different from me, maybe short and squat, does that mean now that that person isn't capable? So it's just bringing it to awareness. It's not saying that it's good or bad, it's just awareness. And awareness is where we can bring some change about. Oh, implicit bias, I did mention the Harvard one. I don't think I can bring this up again and share it. No, I can't. But I can tell you where it's at.
Could you maybe copy and post the link into the chat box?
That sounds perfect. Let's do that.
Because I think I'd actually like to take that.
I actually did that one in my internship at CAT. They recommended it because I was in a mentoring program, and that was one of the discussion topics. And it takes there are like 15 or 20 of them, and they all address different things, and they take like 3 minutes to do. It's kind of interesting to find your results because there were certain aspects that I thought preference for that I didn't have preference for, or I had preference for the exact opposite, even though I on my initial thoughts were like, no, I'd probably lean one way or the other.
I think I sent the thing, but it didn't do the link. Let's see.
I wonder if we just search that on the internet, if we would be able to find it. Do you have to have a special, can anybody take that?
Anyone, it's free and open to the world because they're sort of standardizing it.
Uh-huh.
Here we go.
All right, well, while Carl does that, thank you so much for coming to speak with us today and for your presentation. Sorry we had issues getting started at the beginning. But at this point, you are welcome to stay on if you would like, but you're not obligated to. We're going to move into, for the last, until about 5:40 we'll go to. Mrs. Zimmerman and Dr. Doha are going to share about their own experiences in supply chain and diversity. And whoever would like to start first can go ahead.
Dr. Doha, do you want to go ahead and go?
Yeah, no problem at all. So how much time I have? 10 minutes?
Yeah, that's probably good.
Okay. It's very hard to finish within 10 minutes because I'm not prepared. I will talk from my experience because all of you know that I came from a small country, Bangladesh, which is located in subcontinent, and it's known as India subcontinent. So we are like India once upon a time. The British ruled us more than 200 years. And so after that, we divided into Pakistan, and then we again divided into in Bangladesh from Pakistan. So the reason I told you because our parents, my grandparents, actually got the education from India subcontinent. My father had a both experience, British, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So from my childhood, actually, I got a lot of diversity, the messages from the different corner. And moreover, I have visited like a 45 around countries for the business and academic purpose. So I met a lot of diverse people for the sake of business and academic reason. So because the focus is supply chain here. So I'm just focusing on one angle within 10 minutes. There are so many things I could talk about. But for the business especially, I have been involved with the family business. So whenever we are searching for like sourcing, especially because in Bangladesh industries need a lot of sourcing from the outside. So in that case, then we are looking at the first, the consideration is price over there. And the second consideration is quality. So there are so many other considerations. So in that case, normally we know that the technology is driven from the Europe or USA or some other country like Japan and all these countries. But the problem is the affordability. So in this case, then what we see that the lot of, I can give a lot of examples like some of you already worked in Caterpillar or John Deere and some other companies. So they have had an affiliation with Asian countries, for example, India, China, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, or Thailand, even Indonesia. So we try to collaborate with those instead of contacting with the mother company located in USA or Europe. This is how actually we are negotiating the price and quality, because there are a couple of versions. As you know, the book has also the several versions. Some books are, though it is publishing here, but there will be a like Indian versions or Chinese version or some other versions. So I am telling this, so whenever you're dealing the business, then you look for saving your money and produce the your production cost must be minimized, not sacrificing the quality. So in that case, then you have to move around the world and find out then what is your best sources within the minimum price. And so far we have seen that most of the companies, most of the giant companies, those who have the patent right, especially in, I can give another example, like Aviagen is a very giant company in agro sector, and they are dealing with the genetics. So, but they have their, the branches in Asian country like Malaysia, Thailand, and some other even other country. So we are directly dealing with them, and we are negotiating with the price and quality. That this is all about the sourcing. So also, but in some cases, then we directly import from the USA because though it's a costly. There is an example I can give you. The North American, the hatching machine, because I'm talking about the agro sectors and livestock sectors. They're like the hatching machines. It is the price of one hatching machine is like more than around $100,000 in USA. But the similar pattern of products, you can buy it from China or Thailand and even Malaysia, then like is a 1/5 or 1/6 of the 100,000. So, but again, the longevity is not the same, but you can do your work like 20 years to or 15 years. So this is all about managing your business wherever you are. See, the one day one of our guest speaker from probably Fastenal, and he said that even we are trying to find out the alternative sources, but the China is still coding as the lowest codes. Even we are look the alternative sources. So people will consider the price first, and that is the one of the obligations. And then after ensuring your sourcing, then you will get a good products. And now the problem is then where to sell the products. And then you have to create the supply chain if you are doing international business, or this is a different ball game. And if you are like only dealing with the domestic market, and this is then another ball game. So domestic is much more easier, but international is much more difficult, because when we are getting the sourcing materials from outside different part of the world and confine them in a place and then make a product and then again send it back to the other different countries, so then the costing will be goes high. So in that case, then what we are trying to do, then we are trying to establish our industry in such a place so that which is the near to the buyer. So this is all about the mapping of supply chain. Then we have to do, it's a complex, because if you move around the world, and there is a lot of issues of the patent rights, a lot of issues of like the quality, a lot of issues of the conflicting between or among the countries. So, and then you have to manage, because if you need more raw materials, and then you'll be stuck with so many complexities. And then you make the products, and there is another need. You need some talent people, those who will work in your operation to ensuring the quality, ensuring the better process, manufacturing process. So you need to hire some people as well, and you have to have the connections with the other part of the world. So then you have to deal the diversity, obviously. I can tell you that in our industry, then a lot of Chinese people are working, a lot of Americans people are working, a lot of European people are working, because, you know, sometimes the USA or European or Australian peoples are you know, costly to handle, but still the quality, to maintain the quality, then you have to hire those people. So you have to blend the diversity in every aspect, from the sourcing to, you know, reaching out to your product to the destination. So there are another issues is happening, like what is compliances issues. So if you want to go above the bound and supply your product to like any other country, then you have to deal the compliances issues. So in that case, then because the different country is setting their own rules, or their association of a member, trade association member, so they have their own set rules, like SAFTA, NAFTA, something like this in our Asian region, SAARC, or ASEAN countries. So there are so complexities that you need to deal, and then you need to know then what exactly requirement they have. So in sourcing cases, sometimes I talk in my classroom, like wheat or maize, or like this kind of things we are importing from Brazil or USA. So Brazil is the competitor of USA, and now the Asian countries are preferring USA corn. But the problem is the costing, and Brazil is giving nearest, the USA's quality is #1, but it's not that far away of the Brazilian corn. So then we are expecting, another issue is the timing. Then we need extra 15 days to get the USA corn, but Brazilian corn will reach 15 days before with a little less quality. I should not say like it's the bad quality. So that's why, so sometimes what happened, even the quality is good, due to the distance, you cannot trade off. So why I'm telling you that the reason behind of the diversity, the American business houses are working over there. They're trying to adopt their business with those business houses, and then so you have to blend the peoples, and they have to deal with a lot of culture, a lot of diversity in your organization. And
Right.
the major thing, I'm just finishing, I know the time is running out. So the hunt the talent. So you have to hunt talent hunting is the main thing. So wherever the process needed, if it is like a warehouses, if it is like a transportations, like in transportation cases, and then you need to implement a lot of things as well to deal, and because different country has a different transportation structures. So I'm giving you the brief, briefing of what's happening, how we are interacting with the the diverse people and the diverse countries to get the sourcing materials and process the materials and process the things to get a finished product and send the final product to the customers. So I think the time is up for me. So if any questions, then I'll be happy to answer.
Right, I think you make a good point that business itself drives diversity because products come from all over the world, and the pricing and the quality and the advantages of one country over another change for every product. So naturally, business.
You cannot stick on like one country or one region. So
Right.
you have to move forward. Or move.
Right. Mrs. Zimmerman, would you like to share a bit? I know we all are pretty familiar with you and that you've worked for a Japanese company. Just share, I don't know what you had planned, if there was anything in particular, but we'd love to hear from you as well.
So when you asked me to talk about, diversity, it really made me, I remembered back to when I was I was working in manufacturing, and two things came to mind. So you had mentioned specifically about working for a Japanese company, but actually what stood out to me more was being a young female in a factory setting. I felt more stereotypes or bias against me because of that. But I'll talk about both. So let me first talk about the Japanese aspect. So I worked for a Japanese company, and the way that it was, so it's a global company, but with lots of subsidiaries. So NTN Bauer is one subsidiary of NTN Global. And we had two locations. One is the corporate headquarters for NTN Bauer is Macomb, Illinois. We also had what we considered, so we had corporate, and then we had a factory in Macomb, and then we also had a factory in Hamilton, Alabama. And most of the plant level, the site level managers were American. But most of the corporate managers were all Japanese. And that's how the company worked. So what would happen is the president of NTN Bauer was always Japanese. He would come over from Osaka, Japan, and they would come for about 5 years, basically until their visa expired, and they would rotate out. So every 5 years, we would get a new president. The same is very similar to our vice presidents, and a lot of the higher level corporate managers were Japanese, and they were sent to us from Japan. And so it was just kind of a rotation. And the thing that I recognized was across all of the NTN global facilities, females in leadership was less than 1%. And I even recognized that my American managers had made the comment to me that I'm management material, I'm a great leader, and I was the first person that they put into the continuous improvement department. They created the department, and I was the first one they thought of. And that was really about my communication and personality, because I was going to have to be a change agent, someone that would go out and get people to change the way that they would think about things. And so it was my communication that put me there. But I remember when, there was an opening for we called it Monozukuri because it's a Japanese company. So the Japanese term for continuous improvement is Monozukuri. And so I was the first member of the Monozukuri department, and they put an advertisement out to hire a Monozukuri manager. And so I approached them and I said, can I put in for that? Or why am I being considered for that? And they said no. And I asked why, and they said, well, it's just not really the way we do things. Okay. And I didn't really know what that meant. At the time, and the whole time I was there was one female manager. And I had made a comment to her about I'm interested in the management position. And what they had said to me was, you've never supervised anybody before, so we're not just going to throw you into this role, even though there was no one in the department to supervise. And so I'm like, well, if I'm going to be manager someday, I have to start somewhere. And this is a small department, so why not start with one or two subordinates while I learn to be a manager? And when I said something to the HR director, who was a female, she said, honey, don't even waste your time. You're beating your head against a brick wall. And I said, what do you mean? And she says, you are a female in a Japanese company. You will never become a manager. And I was dumbfounded by that statement because I didn't even think of that. I didn't think that was an option. Yeah, I was young and inexperienced. At that time, I had been there for about 4 years, and I had proven myself as a good work ethic and knowledgeable and intelligent and a good communicator, a good leader. They even used those words for me to describe me. And so I didn't understand why I wouldn't become a leader, why I wouldn't become a manager. And so they hired this dude from who knows where. He was an interesting individual. And I was extremely resentful because I felt I deserved that position. They had actually invested a lot of money in me to train me to become this Monozukuri leader. And they had sent me all over the place. I had gone to Canada, I had gone to Pennsylvania, I had gone to Indiana and trained and went to other NTN facilities to train, but also to conduct audits of other NTN facilities. And so they were recognizing my skill and my knowledge. And then they hired this doofus. And I totally resented him to the point where it affected me. And so as a Christian, I don't want to hate anybody, but I got to the point where I kind of like hated this man because I felt I deserved that position. And to the point when I would get around him, like it would make me kind of ill. So anyway, I'm like, okay, this is not cool. He is my boss. We're the only two in the whole department. So I've got to work with him and get along with him. And as silly as this sounds, I didn't have the guts to say something to him. And he was totally oblivious. He thought we were best friends. And so finally I wrote him a letter because that's the only way I could feel like I could really express what I wanted to express. And I told him in that letter, his name was Joe. I said, Joe, I apologize for the way that I have been, but up until this point, I have truly hated you. And I just told him that. And he was really surprised by the letter, of course. So I remember him and I sat down after he read so I handed him the letter. I said, please read this. When you're done, I'd like to talk to you. And of course, I'm sitting in my cubicle at the time, like shaking, because I just told my boss I hated him. And I told him basically in that letter, I told him the reason I hate you is because I resent you. I felt I deserved this position. And frankly, in that month that he had been there, I did more than him. And I had to show him how to do things. I had to teach him stuff. And the whole time I'm thinking, this clown is making more money than me. He gets the fancy title. And I'm really having a hard time with it. And so after I gave him that letter, we sat down and we were able to, he just said, wow, honey, I had no idea. He said, thank you for being honest with me, but obviously we need to work this out. And he, strangely enough, that was in 2008. So I don't know if anybody knows what happened in 2008, but the recession hit and he lost his job. We only worked together for a total of maybe 6 months. And so anyway, and I'm such a coward. So I'm 20, let's see, at this time I'm 20, maybe 24, maybe 25. And when I knew what was happening, when the HR director came in to escort him out because he just lost his job, I literally went and hid in the bathroom. Because I didn't know what to say to him. I mean, I just told like a couple weeks earlier, maybe a month earlier, I told the man I hated him and told him I deserved his job. And then now he's losing his job. And I just didn't know quite how to face him. And so I, like a coward, I went and hid in the bathroom. But then, to me, the telling tale of the bias was even more so after the fact. So he lost his job. And I am still the only person in that department at this point. Actually, that's not true. We had one other guy who worked for us part-time. And so I'm like, okay, surely they're going to give this to me now, right? Like I've proven myself. Even Joe admitted that I not necessarily deserved his job, but that I was really good at my job. And anyway, ends up I never did get the manager's position. And when I approached an American manager, a male this time, who was the top dog in the facility. He was the plant manager. The only person higher than him was the Japanese vice president and president. And I said to him, you know, is there a reason that I'm not going to get this management position? And he too flat out said, you will never get this position because you are a female working in a Japanese company. So I mean, I didn't let it get to me personally. That's not who I am. I mean, obviously I did if I took it out on this other man, but it just, I still, and you know, this is in 2008, and we're still seeing this discrimination, frankly, and admittedly so. I mean, they flat out admitted it, and they blamed it on the culture. So that was definitely a big eye opener to me. And when the HR person said, don't even try for it, like I just was really beaten down over that. And then, and I know I'm running out short on time, but the other side of it too was coming in fresh out of college. I'm a girl in a man's world. And Dr. Patterson, you can probably vouch for that. Manufacturing is very much a man's world.
Very much so. I actually had a supervisor that we imported. I worked for Minute Maid, which is part of the Coca-Cola company. We actually imported a young supervisor out of Adelaide, Australia, a young man who wanted some international experience. So we ended up with him there. And in the first 2 weeks he was in the factory, he alienated literally everybody in the factory of about 450 people. Number one, he couldn't understand why a woman would ever walk into a factory, want to work in a factory. And secondly, everybody else was lazy because they didn't work as hard as he did. Well, guess who got ostracized? We actually ended up finding a position for him in Puerto Rico and shipped him off to Puerto Rico for the last year or so that he was with the company. But the Japanese, you know, implicit bias, it doesn't exist in Japan. They're flat out biased, and they'll tell you that.
Yep. And I don't know, you know, maybe that's changed today, but I doubt it. Yeah. But then, you know, just again, being a young female at 20, when I graduated with my MBA, I was 21. And so being a 21-year-old and in a factory setting, they, particularly my suppliers, so not as much internally, because internally they knew I was very smart and I was knowledgeable and I was a hard worker, but it was the suppliers that would come, the salesmen that would come to talk to me were very demeaning. They were very like, I mean, they're literally, so to get to my boss, you had to walk through my office to get to his office. So they assumed, first of all, that I was a secretary because I was in front of his office. And so I would say, no, I'm the purchasing agent for this product line. So can you show me what you have? And they said, oh, I'd rather talk to your boss. Okay. Then my boss would turn around and say, no, she's your person. She's the one that's going to negotiate with you. She's the one that's going to decide the contract. And then they would just kind of like, still, they would, you know, in negotiations class, we talk about building rapport. They spent the time small talking with him. And then to me, they would come and throw a brochure on my desk and say, oh, if you have any questions, just call me. And I was so, again, like, you people think I'm an idiot here? Like, why won't you like, sure, I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't know what a bearing was when I started, but I'm a quick learner and I'm not stupid. And so it's like, I know what I'm supposed to be buying. So when I'm supposed to buy a V-belt, I have the specs in front of me. I have the blueprints in front of me. I know what I need. Let me make the decisions, negotiate with me, talk to me. And until I was able to truly establish rapport with many of the suppliers, I faced that till the day I left. If it was a new supplier that would come, and I do think it was a combination of a female and being young and inexperienced. So I guess my lesson to my learning points in that is I'm not, you know, a type of person that is woe is me, you know, the women get, you know, we're so discriminated against, and because I don't think that's always the case, but I definitely experienced that in manufacturing. I hope that today that's changed. But actually another one I'll bring to your point is I think age discrimination may be even worse than gender discrimination. Now I'll tell you also that the pandemic to me has highlighted some gender discrimination when it comes to the workload required of a female mom specifically. I just read yesterday that the amount of moms that are having to drop out of the workforce is astounding compared to the amount of men. And that's because we have a lot of demands on us as a mom. And my husband is extremely involved and extremely helpful, but frankly, he works night shift. And so he's sleeping right now. And so he's not a whole lot of help right now. And thankfully my kids are outside playing on the swing set. But I've noticed that in the pandemic, it's brought into people's attention that women sometimes do have it a little bit harder. But also going back to the age discrimination, I had a conversation today with a colleague, and I'll say that's where I show stereotype. I assume that old people don't know how to use technology. Based on, go ahead, Jim.
The only reason I upgraded a computer one time was because I didn't even have a mouse. You know, it was MS-DOS based. You know, I had to update my computer because the new printer driver didn't come on a 5 1/4 inch disc. So yeah, in some senses you're right. Today maybe not as much, but you know, because you think about your grandparents. Well, I'm the same age as your grandparents, okay, or very close, and you guys come naturally. I look at my grandkids. The oldest one is a 13-year-old. And I look, they don't know anything but technology. To me, I ran a computer center for the Marine Corps that the Marine Corps bought in 1963. It did one thing at a time, and it took up 2 20-foot trailers to do it. Everything was stored on tapes. And you know, that was technology. You know, and younger people, basically, you grow up with it. And it's more natural to you. It's not natural to, but that is somewhat legitimate. I know a lot of exceptions to that, but on the average, it's probably not a far.
Yeah, but the point is, and how much time do we have, Natalie?
We've got 1:50.
Well, so my point and my lesson would be that we discriminate in a lot of different ways. We are biased in a lot of different ways, and we have to just be mindful not to stereotype, because not every old person doesn't know how to use technology. My husband's 80-year-old grandma was amazing with the internet, like 10 years ago before she passed away. And like to the point where it just totally flabbergasted me. But so we have to be mindful of that. And I think diversity in a lot of ways, whether it's age, gender, whatever, is a really good thing. And now a lot of companies are doing reverse mentoring, where you guys get to help the older people learn technology and learn new ways. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities in diversity. And I'm out of time, so.
Yeah.
The key that she just said is there's opportunities. And so how are you, as you start your career, how do you take this thing that's a problem for the rest of us and turn it to your advantage? So.
Absolutely. Yep. Very well said. And that was the goal of this meeting. I know it's not typical for a supply chain meeting, but is to recognize we all have this implicit bias and recognize that a business advantage moving forward will be to understand where our biases lie, because it is so obvious and becoming such an issue in the news and everywhere we're talking about, that it will be an advantage to you to be on top of this and to understand. So we're out of time. Thank you all for coming. You'll see the recordings out, and have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.